Welcome to Walk2COP27. I think it's an important event, and I think it's an opportunity for a great number of people who feel frustrated in one way or another, that they want their names to be counted and they want to make a difference, and they want to make sure that their feelings are felt and heard. And this is a very good way in which we can join together as a group and show that we are concerned about climate change, and we're concerned about the essential work that needs to be done at COP27. COP26 had some very interesting moments. I thought that the warm-up to it was very important indeed, and it looked as though we were really engaging with the urgency of what we were about. The fact that so many world leaders turned up was very encouraging. Boris Johnson said we were 5 minutes to midnight and that really things needed to happen. So much positive news as we approached that meeting in Glasgow. And indeed, I attended the meeting and there was much to celebrate, at least at the beginning. The very first thing I did when I got to Glasgow was to join an interfaith group in George Square, where 9 different faiths, representing something like 85% of the world's population, joined in prayer. And each of us had a prayer, and I couldn't disagree with a single word of any of the prayers. We understood the value of creation, its importance, and that we cherish it, and that we cultivate responsibly all that we've been granted in our climate and in our environment and in our world. And there was some very good news too in those first days. The end to deforestation, but of course that was immediately undermined by the fact that Brazil has upped its deforestation by 15%, even more than it was doing in its damage to the Amazon before. There was a very good agreement on methane, but I don't think they really carried out the details. And there was a lot of talk about loss and damage, which sounded exactly right, that we were taking responsibility for the damage that we, the prosperous nations, have already done for global nations in the south who have suffered so much, and they really do know the effects of the damage of climate change. It all sounded very good and was going well, but then all the world leaders had gone and it was left to the negotiators, and all too many of them were negotiating for a very limited advance. And it seems too that in the 10-11 months since COP26, most of those decisions really haven't been forwarded to any great degree. But what have we seen in the last 10 months? My word, we've seen some appalling evidence of climate change. Even in the last couple of weeks, we've heard about the typhoon in Japan, or Typhoon Fiona in the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. We've heard about the floods in Alaska. And let's not forget for one moment those appalling floods in Pakistan, where 33 million people have been displaced. It's going to take years for Pakistan to recover. And let's face it, even if there were no other disasters, years of progress to rehabilitate everyone. But it's likely that there'll be much more flooding in those years. Yes, we really are facing an appalling catastrophe. And it's important that world leaders are listening. That's what struck me about COP26, was that the leaders were not really listening to the people they were leading. There was a wonderful demonstration in Glasgow of young people. They estimated that there might be 40,000 would turn up to the demonstration, but they had to admit that 120,000 turned up that day. Young people very concerned about their future, and rightly so. So we've got to think carefully about the urgency of what we're doing. And it's very important that organisations and events like Walk2COP27 be loud in their demonstration of their feelings about climate change. How important it is that we now get to grips with this crisis, which is already affecting so many people in our world, and that we do something to repair the damage and to set realistic but urgent targets for the future. Yes, we've got all the problems over fuel shortages, we've got the conflict in Ukraine. That mustn't deflect us from what we need to be doing now. And that comes down to you and me. And we can be doing lots of things. They may seem very small, and actually most of those things don't really interfere with our standard of living at all. But they do make sure that we care for the way that we live. It's our use of water, our use of electricity. Do we need all those lights on all the time? Do we need the heating to be quite what it normally is? What about the waste? What about the food that we waste? Or the stuff that we simply throw into the streets and pollute everywhere? Plastic is an enormous problem in our world. There are various things that we can be doing. Sharing our travel arrangements. Walking more rather than getting in the car every time we need to go down to the shops. Lots of little things. And then we can do that in our parish groups and our local communities. There's lots of information out there, and it's not frightening. It's not meaning that we're all going to suddenly turn into a simplicity of life that borders on poverty. Not at all. But if we take these small actions, we can make a great deal of difference. So let's salute the efforts of Walk2COP27. It's an important sign of our concern, and it surely will make an impact. But it's also our individual work, are those actions that we can take. And we may think about writing to our MPs. Are they listening to our concerns? Are we representing our young people by writing to our political leaders to make sure that they know that this is now an urgent priority? I'm delighted that events such as Walk2COP27 are taking so much publicity nowadays. It's important that in this approach to COP27 in Egypt, we make our feelings heard loudly and clearly. Thank you.